What's going on, everybody? Welcome to At the Gardens. My name is Garrett Wilhelm. I'm the CEO of Creative Gardens Early Education Virginia, and I'm here to bring really awesome people on the show to talk about education, children's products, anything when it comes to kids. And I'm really, really excited today because we have a guest on that, I put the feelers out there to the community and saying, who would want to come on the show to talk about their experience with education. And today's guest has kiddos. They're in the charter school system and have started school already. So we're going to go ahead and bring Keren on. And hold on one second. We're going to go ahead and do that. Give her a lead in. And welcome, Keren. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so, Keren jumped out when I put the call out for local people to talk about this subject. She said she already had her kids in school. Kids or kid?
Kids.
Kids.
Boys.
Oh, 2 boys. How old?
3. So I have 5, 7, and 10. So kindergarten, 2nd grade, and 5th grade.
That's amazing. And we won't necessarily, unless you feel comfortable, say the name of the school, but they go to charter school, correct?
Yes.
Very cool. First of all, I love the, there's backlash and there's obviously polarization when it comes to everything. I mean, you could bring up any subject and there's people here and here. But I'm a big fan of charter schools in the sense of they go outside of what the public school typically does to meet the needs of kiddos. And, for me, what has been your overall pre-COVID experience with charter schools?
We were actually in Loudoun County public school system before we switched over to charter. We looked at private schools just because we felt like our kids' needs weren't exactly being met in the way they needed to be. Obviously, every child is different and has different needs, and you can't fit a square peg in a round hole, that whatever that saying is. So
that's exactly the saying.
We just knew we had to find something, that worked for our kids. And when we found charter, we absolutely fell in love with it just because they do so much more hands-on, the work and the school, everything about it. It's so much more community. Our charter school is a little different because grades are combined. So you actually have 2 grade groups working together with specialized teachers in the different subjects. So it's met a lot of our needs in a great way.
Yeah, I just think it's an interesting, for me, I'm a Montessori educator. I come from that background, and mixed age environments is something that we do kind of standard. And what's super interesting to me is that these charter schools come up and they clearly show results. I'm sure just, from you and your experience in charter schools and the success that you see within your kiddos, you kind of see one that, maybe we should as a whole, as a society, head in that direction. Yet I feel we're so stuck in the institutionalized version of education that kind of, teaches in one way and quantifies success in one way. It's good to hear, though, that there are schools in the area that are publicly funded that are actually doing the hard work. For you, what was kind of the pinnacle point for you to say, like, I'm done with this public school experience?
So my oldest always did fine, but when my second started school, his first part of his year went well, but as the year went on, I just saw him shutting down more and more, and that was not his personality at all. And it got to a point where I was literally dragging him to the bus. He was crying. At school, his teachers were like completely surprised because they thought he was a model student, had great grades, but he hated the environment. He said he felt like he was walking into a prison every morning. And so that, whatever that means to a 6-year-old. But
yeah,
we knew we had to change something. And we did. And after, we just started with him at first, but when we saw the results, we were like, yep, all of them are going. So that's when everyone went over.
So, and we don't have to labor on, I'm so interested in charter schools in this area,
Yeah.
And for me, I even tried to start one in Reston, where I'm from, Reston's first charter school. But if you can imagine, just trying to get one open is extremely, extremely difficult. So, But in that experience, so you got one kiddo in. How challenging was that? And then ultimately the rest of your kiddos. But how challenging was it to get your child actually into a charter school in the area?
So actually, the year that we joined, they were having there's two charter schools in Loudon, and the year that we joined, they were having quite a bit of a staff turnover. So several families had left and come and gone, and so we ended up being able to secure a spot for our second pretty easily. And then siblings get pretty much priority after you already have one in, so it wasn't too hard for us to get the other ones in after the first one was in. The way the charter schools kind of work with funding is like they don't get the full funding from the county unless they're at capacity. So it's really important for us to build the school. I know this year we have a wait list, but a couple years ago when we joined, we weren't quite there yet. So
Yeah, I wonder why you have a wait list this year. That's interesting. But yeah, and I think that's a great transition point into talking about the kind of meat and potatoes of the conversation that I'd like to have today, which is, as parents gear up, in a couple of weeks, well, really 3 weeks, to send their kiddos back to school in Loudoun County. Obviously, sending their kids back to school is kind of a funny thing to say in general because they're just plugging them in on a computer and saying go. Now, first of all, in your charter school, is it full virtual?
yes.
Yeah. And how, we'll get into, again, a more granular talk around it, but overall, what's your kind of first impression of how things are going?
I will say compared to the spring that it is much more organized. I feel like they did really take the time to prepare over the summer. Is it easy? Like, no. Especially when you have a family with two full-time working parents and 3 kids in 3 different grades. It's definitely challenging.
Would you have found that, you being, and if folks don't know out there, Keren is a realtor in the area, and from my understanding, you get to kind of make your own schedule in that, and really what the market dictates to you, and that's kind of your schedule. Have you had to minimize the amount of work that you do on a daily because of this?
I definitely had to be creative to try to plan my schedule and schedule my appointments on times where I know I don't have to be with them. We've also been looking at hiring help. So I've had some people come, but that's hard to find because a lot of people either want a full-time job or they're not available at certain times. So it's a little challenging to find part-time help.
Yeah, and to call a spade, it's like you have a certain amount of people, that understand that there's an inherent risk going back to school and really to work and life anyway. And you have another side of those people that are just not comfortable re-entering the world. And so, it's super interesting to me, kind of how we define that and how we decide whose jobs are essential. And in this kind of field of conversation, I hear a lot because I try to, and I don't know about you, but I try to kind of get both sides to make an informed decision. And there's one side to say that, LCPS educators and educators in general should be essential workers. And if that be the case, then should they be, in the classrooms, in the environment, making sure that this all happens. But then, of course, on the other side of things, there's is it clean enough? Is it safe enough? Where do you, if you don't mind me asking, sit when it comes to that? I know I don't want to like put an opinion on you or like hold you tight to an opinion, but I would be really interested to hear.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where I don't think there's like a perfect answer to it because as much as I want my kids back in school, I know they need that for the socialization and all that kind of stuff. You can hear them in the background. I personally don't want my kids going back to school being required to wear masks or sit in these plexiglass cubicles. If that is the option for going back, I'll school at home all day long. So there's really a plan to go back and have it be as normal as it possible. I think kind of the best decision is what we're doing right now, even though it's challenging. But that's my personal
No, I
opinion.
think there's a lot of, there's a lot of parents like you. I think, and I personally agree in the sense of we can't do this kind. I was taking a look at the school board meeting. Nice. I can only imagine what just happened in the background.
Of
But
course.
I think I was watching the school board meeting, and I have one of my stepsons is autistic, and he does a one-on-one school environment. Are we about to say hi? What's up, my friend? Who's this?
This is Jordan.
Hi, Jordan. What a cool name. I have lots of shoes that have your name on them. Isn't that cool? Do you have Jordan shoes at home too? I would imagine.
You have Jordan shoes? You used to.
Oh, well, you grew out of them. That's right. And they're a mint. They're like a mint to buy. But Jordan, we're just talking to mommy about school. How do you enjoy school? Yeah, it's totally weird. This is kind of your school experience, right? Is looking at a screen.
Lots of hand motions because they keep them on mute during a lot of the calls, so they answer questions with,
Thumb up, thumb down, thumb to the.
thumbs
What
up.
does thumb do? Does this mean I don't know?
Is this, I don't know, what kind of maybe.
Hey. Very cool. Very cool.
It doesn't.
What's that?
It doesn't. It doesn't know which hand it is. I'm literally holding up this hand.
Because it's weird. The screen's moving, yeah.
Got it. I totally got it. These are the confusing things we need to figure out during these times of quarantine.
No, but what Nathan was trying to.
Can I finish the meeting, please?
These are our lives, right? I think it's so different. But I think, I pointed out a lot of interesting things. And for me, there's a lot of positive that's come out of this experience, like, having to adapt. And I think we as a society are not as in tune with our children as we need to be. And this has kind of forced us to do that. So, but kind of what I was saying before was, I agree with you in the sense of if we're going to come back, we're going to come back full on. And until then, we should probably keep a different environment because, one, you're putting your kids at risk in a lot of ways, sending them to school. And a lot of the data that's coming out now shows that kids can actually transmit the virus. And, and the reason why like a school like mine can open is because we have such small scale numbers and we have groups of 10, right? So like I can clean the entire, which we do, clean the entire school every single day and fog it with disinfectant every day and all of that stuff. But that just at scale is not going to happen. So I was kind of talking a little bit about my son that was on the who's on the spectrum and how they were, allowing, and this is what I had a problem with to kind of go to your point, which is they're allowing kids to go into like home ec and things like that at the academies, which is the school for gifted in Loudoun. But they're not allowing special needs kids to go into an environment 1 to 2 to 3 days a week, which to me doesn't sit well with me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not. And for me, I'm kind of with you. It's like until we can, on a mass scale in our public schools, come back safely, we just need to be getting comfortable doing stuff like this. So, but, how do you feel when it comes to your charter school experience and your kids being back? Are you able to, and this is a big question that I think parents want answered is, are you able to kind of conduct your everyday normal kind of life with your kids, especially young kids, being responsible for their own schedules and being online and being virtual?
Yeah, not really. Not really. I mean, they've made it very easy. I mean, the kids, especially once they learn how to log into everything and where everything is located, they definitely can be a lot more independent. But it does take a lot of, especially for the younger ones, just keeping them on task and double checking to make sure, maybe they logged into the live meet, but did they follow up with the assignment? If they did the assignment, did they submit it or upload it and share it? Just keeping them on task. My 5th grader, for the most part, can do it, and I just kind of go in at the end of the day and make sure he didn't miss anything. My other 2, and it depends on the child too. Some are work independently really well, and some need a lot more, just help them focus and stuff. So But I think that's been a big thing that we weren't quite expecting, because there are certain times when they're required to get on lives, and then even though they're recorded, it's like you sort of watch the recording. There's no interaction, right? So they need that interaction where they can ask questions, but those are at certain times. So, and for us, they're usually like 8:30 in the morning, 11, 2, and 3, which is, the whole portion of the day. So I can't just get up in the morning and say, hey, we're going to knock school out in 3 hours, and then I can go do appointments. We are pretty much plugged in when we get up until 3 o'clock.
Yeah. Would you say that it would be easier because I come from a background, right, of like, I've done a lot of work in personalized learning. I've done a lot of work in Silicon Valley working with software companies to kind of change the way education looks and feels. But a lot of that was driven on kids understanding what they need to learn and then crafting a schedule themselves that meets their needs. Would you say, like, based upon, the mixture of live and what they call synchronous learning, I think, God, just say that you're doing it with a group, like, come on, get rid of all the lingo. And I have my whole feeling about that. But, having that and then having recorded lessons, things like that, would you say that it potentially would be easier on parents if you could kind of know what today looks like concept wise and competencies and what they need to learn, and then kind of structure their own day around not only the child's needs, but let's call a spade again and say like parents' needs, because now we're educators at home as well as whatever you do for your job.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point, and that's actually kind of a suggestion I had made to our administration at the beginning of the year. Is for us in the spring, it didn't go well. But I was like, if you could tell me weekly or monthly or whatever, what the objective is, like what are we trying to learn or master, and then let us figure out how we're going to get that, and whether it's going outside and counting sticks, or whether, you know what I mean? So, because every child learns differently, and maybe looking at a screen isn't the way they learn the best. So if we have this objective and then have some way to, at the end of said period, present that, we understand what the objective is. But then, I know that doesn't work for everyone too.
Well, and you're right. Everybody learns differently, but what you're kind of describing is a very modern approach to learning, just called project-based learning, right? Is what you need to learn, you dive into that subject, and then at the end of it, at the end of your exploration, you share what you've learned to show your competency. And what we do know in education, kind of on the nerdy side of education, is that works, like in general, because if you give kids the ability to share what they've learned in a way that speaks to them. For instance, you might have an artist as a child, you might have a sports kid as a child, you might have both. Like, to be able to display what they've learned in that context tends to really show success. And I think overall we've again, and I love that you sent your kids to charter schools, because it shows that you've looked at the system and gone, this is not really working out. But the way we do it in our public school system is like, we teach in one way, which is memorization and regurgitation. And then we expect them to kind of respond in a way that meets our needs, not the child's needs. And I think overall, you kind of hit the nail on the head when it comes to at least what I think they should be doing is like, here's the stuff, right? And here's an organization. And we can do a lot of the heavy lifting up as educators, but you as the parent can kind of, especially in this environment, you can structure that around a schedule that works for everybody, because ultimately you stressed because you have a showing at X time, yet your child still has to get their lesson in, doesn't really create an environment for learning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I can only imagine the stress that you, and I experience it myself too. I have 5 kids, but we're a blended family, and the age groups are 13 to 2. I have a young one. We're very much the Brady Bunch. But, here, thankfully, at my school, we're doing this program, the GAP program, where we have kids come in and we help them. We have certified teachers kind of working with them. But again, we can only do that because we have the ability to have small, controlled environments. The public school just has not gotten there yet. Are you using Schoolology as a platform?
Yes.
What's your feedback on that?
So far, I like it. It's nice having all, a lot of what they need in one place. And the teachers, pretty much they log in every morning. They can see their day and all the times. And all the links are just right there in Schoology. So they just click on them, and then you'll see like if there's a live meeting, live link to click on. And then, so it helps just combine everything so that we're not going to a bunch of different websites. Although we are using different platforms, we can put all the links right there, and they can navigate.
So what are the because again, I don't think that parents are really going to understand this until they're in action. What other platforms have you been using? Google Classroom, things like that?
Yeah, so my older one uses Google Classroom more. They're using, let's see, for math, they're doing like some math stuff on Prodigy. They're using a platform called Epic for reading stuff. Then there's IXL. So there's those type of platforms. And then the teachers are just doing a lot of like recording basically a video lesson and then asking questions, and the child can draw or make a video or, whatever, and upload their response to the lesson in like the comment box underneath the lesson. So I can't even remember what, if that is part of Schoology or if it's another one.
Right.
It's all right there. So
yeah, and as you're kind of talking through all these different platforms and the necessity of Wi-Fi bandwidth, I think about the kids that are low income, and I think about the kids that are don't have the ability, and I think that's an unspoken thing that's happening. Is like, do we make the assumption in Loudoun County, even though it is the quote unquote richest county in the country, do we make the assumption that every child's going to have access to, I have the best internet you can have as a small business here, and sometimes I get spotty and weird and things like that. So, like, are we making the assumption that that's the case?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that the schools invested a lot of money into providing the little hotspots for low-income housing, but I'm sure
right on.
There's not. Even in our house, we get the internet that we can get, but when you have my husband and me and 3 kids all on live calls, like it gets challenging quite often.
I can only imagine. And so as a realtor, right, and a realtor in the area, and you're based out of where, Percival?
Yeah, I live in Percival. Our
Cool.
office is in Ashburn, so I'm Loudoun County.
So you just do all of Loudoun County. I would imagine that you spend a lot of time with families, right? Like you are helping families find their homes, and I think that that's a super meaningful job. And I have a very good friend of mine as a realtor, and she it has such a pulse on the community. And I think what's great about that job as a realtor is that's evolved over time. Like, I think now you become this kind of networker of connecting people with people. Have you had a lot of people reach out to you about like, Keren, what do I expect? Like and ask you a ton of questions about all this stuff?
Yeah, everyone wants me to have like that crystal ball, like what's going to happen with the market, and this is such a crazy year because we have the elections, right? This year, much less the pandemic and everything that's going on. So I can tell you what we know today. I can tell you what experts are projecting, but I don't have a crystal ball. So yeah,
it's weird because I would imagine, from my understanding, right, and we can talk a little bit about this, the market is actually pretty good for how home buying right now, I would imagine. I know a lot of friends, myself included, we bought a house in January in Brambleton, and then Corona. Like, it was just crazy. So we had to figure out, thankfully we were able to kind of continue our mortgage on and things like that. But it's just a time of unrest, which is crazy. So it's super helpful for the community, for someone like you that connects with people, that can maybe even like plug the right person in with the right person if they have a question about I always can equate the realtors, like they have to have a pulse on the local schools, because you have to recommend those local schools and things like that. So it's a very interesting time for everybody's career, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the last question I would have for you is, if you were to adapt the current status of the way in which the school system is going, like technology wise, all of it kind of as a package, would you have any suggestions overall for the Loudoun County School Board and education in general?
That's hard. That's a hard question to answer, just because there's so many different needs and so many different, there, like I mentioned earlier, there's really no one good answer.
Yeah.
So, and I'm always that type of person that I look at a lot of different people's situations. So I'm not just going to come out and say, this is what I think because it works for me.
So I can't peg you on an opinion. I can't just get you to say, no, I'm totally kidding. And I think that's the feeling of a lot of people, especially, for you and I, who kind of are connected to the community. And for me, I have a kind of front face into the community. I don't like to put my pin on actual stances and things like that. But Keren, I can't thank you enough for joining us on the show today. I really appreciate it. Loudoun County really appreciates it, because I think just in knowing that it's kind of going to all be okay getting into the school year, it takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
The kids, emotional and mental needs, that's, I went into it with the approach, like, we're going to do the best we can, and we're going to can what we can't, because it's the emotional health that really is what needs to be focused on right now. And the other stuff will work itself out. Thank you for saying that, because I think that that's so important. In the scheme of things, your kids are going to be educationally, and this is from an educator for 20 years, they're going to be okay. We'll figure that out. It's the social emotional side of things that parents really need to focus in on, giving attention, giving that extra love, making sure that the kiddos can expect certain things, because there's so much unknown, that there's an undertone anxiety that every child is feeling. So I just think it's really important that message goes out. And again, thank you so much, Keren. If people need to find you as a realtor, where can they find you? Well, I'm all over Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, but my website is loudonhometeam.com. So
awesome. Awesome. So make sure, if you guys need a great realtor, to go to Keren. Keren, thank you so much for joining us today from Creative Gardens. As I always say, we got to keep our heads up and we got to keep moving forward. Thank you so much, and have a fantastic day. Thanks for having me. Have a good one. You too, Keren. Thank you.